the horror book. It was a cold, moonless night when Emily first discovered the book. She was a student at a prestigious university known for its extensive library, a labyrinth of forgotten stories and ancient tomes. She had been working late, searching for materials for her thesis on Gothic literature. As she navigated the narrow aisles of the library's oldest section, something caught her eye. A book, sitting alone on a dusty shelf, its leather cover worn and faded. The spine had no title, only an intricate, twisted symbol. Intrigued, Emily pulled it out, her fingers brushing the edges as if the book itself had been waiting for her. The library was eerily quiet, the air thick with the scent of old paper and ink. As she flipped the cover, the first page greeted her with a single line: "Do not read further." A chill ran down her spine. She hesitated, but her curiosity overpowered her fear. She turned the page. The words seemed to shift as she read, twisting into something darker, more unsettling. It wasn't a typical horror story. It was real. The characters in the book spoke directly to her, urging her to continue. With every page she turned, the surroundings in the library began to warp. The warm glow of the lamps flickered, and the shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. A soft, whispering voice seemed to echo through the silence, too faint to catch but too real to ignore. Emily's eyes darted nervously around the room. The air felt thicker now, almost suffocating. She tried to focus on the text, but the words blurred, reforming into shapes she couldn't understand. They twisted in strange patterns, almost like a language she had never seen before, but something deep inside her urged her to keep going. She shook her head, desperate to snap out of it. "This isn't real," she told herself. But as her fingers traced the next few lines, she felt an odd connection, like the book was tugging at her very soul. It spoke of forbidden rituals, of dark forces that could bend reality, and of a secret power hidden within the library's walls. The more she read, the more she felt the pull of the words, as if they were drawing her deeper into their world. Suddenly, the temperature in the library dropped. She could see her breath misting in the air. The room, once filled with the warm hum of distant voices, was now silent, unnervingly so. The shadows in the corners of the library began to creep along the walls, twisting and shifting, taking on strange, human-like shapes. A soft whisper floated toward her ear. "Turn back." But Emily couldn't stop herself. She flipped to the next page. The library, once a place of safety, now seemed like a vast, oppressive tomb. The aisles stretched on endlessly, and the shelves loomed over her like towering monoliths. She tried to pull herself away from the book, but it was as if the pages had fused to her hands. No matter how hard she tried, her fingers refused to obey, compelled by some unseen force to continue reading. With each new paragraph, Emily's vision began to distort. The words no longer made sense, but she could feel them pressing against her mind, their weight becoming unbearable. Her head ached as if the book were trying to merge her consciousness with something else, something ancient and malevolent. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw movement. A shadow, dark as ink, drifted across the floor, circling her like a predator. Emily's breath quickened. Her heart thudded against her chest. She turned, hoping it was a trick of the light, but the figure was there, tall and thin, its form flickering like a reflection in a broken mirror. She took a step back, her foot catching on something, sending her sprawling to the ground. She could barely breathe now, the oppressive air weighing down on her. But before she could gather her bearings, the figure stepped into the dim light. Its face was hollow, its eyes sunken and dark. Its mouth moved, but no sound came out. A cold hand wrapped around Emily's wrist, pulling her upright. The figure loomed over her, and in the dim glow of the lanterns, she saw that it was holding a book. The same book. Its cover torn and stained with what looked like dried blood. "Put it down," the woman whispered, her voice like a rasp of dry leaves. "You don't understand what you've awakened." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, but her feet were rooted to the spot. The woman stepped forward, her thin, bony fingers outstretched, and as she reached out to touch the book, the words on the pages surged forward, engulfing Emily's mind. Images of death, decay, and unspeakable horrors flooded her senses. The woman's lips moved, though no sound escaped. Emily could hear her thoughts, as if the book was speaking through her. "You should never have opened it. Once you start reading, there is no end." A cold laugh echoed from the shadows, and the walls of the library seemed to close in around Emily. She could feel the weight of the book, the curse that it carried. The whispers turned into screams, the characters from the pages now fully alive, reaching out from the paper, clawing at her. With one final desperate scream, Emily tried to close the book, but it was too late. The pages ripped away, and in the instant before everything went black, Emily saw her own name written in blood on the next page. She woke up, hours later, back in her dorm room, the book nowhere to be found. Her hands shook as she realized the truth. She had never left the library. The world she knew had changed, and now the book, the cursed book, was a part of her. And every night, when she closed her eyes, the whispers began again.